Here we go. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Tuesday night discussions with fascinating people, and we have a very fascinating person, homegrown, but living now in Eretz Yisrael, Davida Gordon. So, Davida, first of all, thank you so much for taking some time to join us.
Thank
It's
you.
really important to us. Thank you. So, not everybody knows you, so give them a little bit of your life background. Where were you born? What's your little bit of your story?
For sure.
We'll tell them why
Um,
you're so interesting to speak with.
yeah, I'm Davida. I'm 24 years old and I grew up in West Rogers Park and I moved to Beis Menachem, Rabbi Epstein, Mrs. Epstein, raising us. And I moved to Israel with a program that helps young adults who want to do Aliyah. It's called Garin Sabar. So the young adults that want to make Aliyah and draft into the army, I joined that group and I moved there in 2017. And I've been living in Israel for almost 7 years now. I guess, yeah, 7 years. And I completed my army service there. And now I'm attending university. I'm in my last year. And just very much so part of a community of immigrants and Israelis that live together. I live in Herzliya, which is like a very beautiful city on the beach above Tel Aviv, with a big community of soldiers, lone soldiers, Olim Chadashim. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I hear the accent when you say the Olim Chadashim and Herzliya above Tel Aviv. Beautiful. Okay, so what prompted this? Was this something that you had always hoped to do? Give us a little bit of the sense. You grow up in the neighborhood, you go to the schools, play in the parks. What is it
Yeah,
that made you, really want to do this 7 years ago? You're just 17 years old to make this bold move.
yeah, it's a good question. And I think there's a long list of answers. So I'll tell you guys the short version. But I think essentially like the community I grew up in, and I went to Ida Crown Jewish Academy, and I also went to Akiba Schechter for elementary school, and I think I was always in a very Zionistic environment. I remember in elementary school we had something called Benot Sherut, which meant that we had two Israeli girls doing national service throughout our elementary school. So every single year I would meet new Israeli girls, and I think that really inspired me from a young age, just like they planted the seed of the love of Israel. And then when I went for my first time when I was 13, I really just fell in love, you know. I think like how everybody kind of feels when they go to the holy sites for the first time and you really feel like your neshama awakens and all of that. And ultimately, I just didn't really connect with, I guess, the classic route of like going to university. And I thought, wow, it would be really amazing to serve in the army and to live in Israel and to integrate. So yeah, I think a lot of mixed things drove me, but ultimately, I think I really wanted to do the army, and I think once you do the army, it really, really kind of locks you in, and then you get a taste of Israel and you see how amazing it is. And I just felt so at home, more at home than I ever felt in West Rogers Park, and not in a bad way to West Rogers Park, just in a way of like, wow, this is part of my journey.
It's amazing. So give us a little bit about that. So when you went at 17, were you required legally to join the army? Was that something you volunteered for? What were your Hebrew skills like? Did you feel fluent? Walk us through that a little bit to get a sense of it.
So yeah, when I moved, um, sorry, what was the first part that you asked me?
About when you got there, were you
Oh,
required to join the
yes, I
army?
was required because I basically made Aliyah. Like, and when you make Aliyah, you get citizenship, you get an Israeli passport, and if you make Aliyah um, at 18, you're required to serve. And I
Mhm.
also did a program that was the purpose, was to basically draft to the army, but you also have 25 other young adults doing it with you, and you live on a kibbutz and you're supported, so you don't feel so alone. I definitely didn't have strong Hebrew skills, but I think I had a good foundation from my Jewish education. But it's a whole different ballgame, you know, when it actually comes to speaking Hebrew and drafting to the army. And there were definitely a lot of challenges, a lot of miscommunications along the way. But there was just so much support, right? These people are like, everybody in Israel is cheering you on. Like everybody thinks you're crazy. Even now, you know, after even now being in Israel for 7 years, I'm sure we'll talk about it soon, but I was just in reserve duty, and I'm with like these a lot of older people, let's say, a bunch of dads in their 40s or a bunch of, whatever, older people. Everybody says like, are you crazy? Like, what, why did you come? But at the same time, they're also saying like, wow, like once you tell them kind of your story, they're so proud of you. I've noticed that I re-inspired like the Zionism within them just from being there. So yeah, I guess if that answers it, I
That
hope that
does.
was
Okay, so
clear.
walk us through the timeline. You arrived, you're 17, almost 18 years old, 7 years ago. You joined the army. What was your initial commitment for the military service? How many years is that?
A full service for a girl that isn't doing a combat service is 2 years. If you're under like a 24, I think, or 22, and I was 18 when I drafted. So I had a 2 year commitment. I drafted to a basic training where a lot of Olim Chadashim draft, and I was able to be in an Ulpan while being in the army for my first 3 months. And after I completed the training, I actually drafted to a job that I only stayed in for a few weeks. I kind of immediately switched because I less connected with it, and then I drafted to a medic course, so I became a medic in my service. And from my medic course that lasted 3 months, I was drafted to a special unit in Totchanim, and
What is that? What is Totchanim?
it's an artillery unit. It's yeah. And it was kind of like a special unit within that unit. And then for a year, a little bit over a year, basically, from after all of those trainings, I served as a medic. And it wasn't anything, too crazy. It was more like being a nurse, right? You are responsible for like 200 of the soldiers that are on base, and they come see you if they're not feeling well. You take their blood pressure, you take their temperature, you decide whether they need to see the doctor or not. You're responsible of their doctor appointments outside of the military, right? If they like need to go to the eye doctor or a specialist. And that was basically most of my service was staying there and being a medic. And then yeah, got released, and I actually continued being a medic on like trips, hiking trips for schools.
Mhm.
I really was happy with my service. I was really happy with my job that I got. Definitely learned so much Hebrew because I was in front of a computer all day, like typing while people are telling me their feelings and their complaints. So that was a super like learn on the job type of feeling.
Okay. So what year did you finish your official army service?
So I finished in like January 2020.
2020.
I was basically not on base from like December 2019, but I think I officially cut my choger is what they call it. You cut your ID when you finish, and I finished on the first week of January
And then
2020.
the pandemic comes, and you were stayed in Israel during the pandemic?
Yeah, I was in Israel through the pandemic. I was kind of doing like these hikes. I was also working at like a bar. I was kind of doing everything, babysitting, kind of just trying to get all the money and grind because I was preparing to do a big trip that a lot of Israelis do when they finish the army.
Mhm.
I was planning on going to South America, and I had bought a ticket and everything, but I bought a ticket for like March 2020. So
At the end of that.
yeah, so the joke was on me, and I didn't end up going. I kind of just ended up working in Israel through the pandemic. I opened like a small cookie business. I kind of was just trying to keep
Very entrepreneurial.
yeah, keep myself up. And I was with like I lived with my brother at the time and two other really good friends. So had a good support system, stayed in Israel. And from there, I went to actually do a yoga teacher training. Like I now teach some yoga. So I went to do a yoga teacher training. I came back to Israel, and and then I decided to go to university. So I started in 20, what was it, in 2021? Yeah, I started a 3 year degree in communications at an international university in Herzliya called Reichman University. And now I'm finishing up, but I barely had a chance to go to class because I was in reserve duty for like 3 months
Okay, so
from
walk
when
us
school
through that.
started.
So, of course, we'd love to hear your story, and it's inspiring and beautiful. So now take us, it's October 7th. You're in Herzliya,
I'm in Yerushalayim, actually.
Yerushalayim. It's
Yeah.
Pnimi Atzeres.
Nachon, it's Simchas Torah in Israel.
Listen to you, Nachon, like
Yeah.
born and bred. Beautiful. So can
Yeah.
you walk us through what that meant for you personally and then how it affected your military obligation?
Yeah. I was actually staying with my really good friend Molly in Baka in Yerushalayim. Her family has a home there, and Molly's my good friend who also moved to Israel, but her family still lives in New Jersey, but they come often. And I was staying with them for the Chag, like I was sleeping there, and my brothers were sleeping by my aunt that lives in Nachlaot. And yeah, October 7th was crazy. Like I woke up in the morning to Molly's mom like bursting in our room, just being like, there's a siren, come to the bomb shelter. And we were all just like, what? Like a siren in Yerushalayim, it's very rare. We're obviously used to sirens in Israel in the south and in the bordered communities by Gaza, but not in Yerushalayim. So it was a really obviously crazy day, crazy holiday. They were supposed to have like a huge lunch, I think in honor of the Chag. They were supposed to have like a ton of people over, and next thing you know, there's just basically a bunch of sirens. So we're going in the bomb shelter and nobody's on their phone. So there's a lot of uncertainty. But their housekeeper is a Filipino worker, and she like kind of is starting to get some updates and share. And then it's just like, I don't know, a lot of like, what? Like how could this be type of feelings, but still so much uncertainty, kind of just like, okay, I guess we have to cancel the lunch, like I don't think anybody's coming over. And then kind of starting to hear like that people are, their neighbor's son is getting called by the army, right, like one by one. And a long story short, I basically ended up going back when the sirens like took a break. I kind of just made my run for it to go back to Nachlaot because I knew that my brother was there, and my brother had served also in the military.
Tea?
And
Keep going, yeah.
what?
Keep going. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm listening. Well,
no problem. My brother had also served in the military, so I was just like, okay, like this sounds kind of serious. So let me go back and check in. And me and Noah and my brother Jake, we just all regrouped. And then yeah, my brother had basically also been called, right? Like he, turned on his phone, he saw that, and then I was like, oh man, like I wonder if they're gonna call me. And then I also saw that I was called, and Noah had to leave the same day, like October 7th, go up, get his stuff. I was told to come in the 8th. So I went in the next
So
day.
where do you have to report? How does that work? Just walk us through.
So yeah, in the army, you get something called a tsav shmone. Okay, and it's basically like I don't know, I'm like so I feel like I've gone so down in my English vocabulary. It's like a mandatory, like you're scripted to come to the army, basically. So how it works is you get like a text message from like Miluim. It's like in your text. And then obviously you actually are contacted by your commander. So if you're serving in reserve duty, like, right, you've done it in the past. I have served in reserve duty even before the war. I had served in 2 medical exercises that my unit participated in, because as a medic, even though I wasn't a combat soldier, I was in a combat unit. And when you're a medic, it's a little bit different if you were serving as a medic in a combat unit, because they need you for something called a ta'agad, which I'll continue to talk about what I did in reserve duty. It's basically a mobile infirmary. So yeah, I basically got a text. I was like, okay, should I disregard this or not? I called Yotam, who's my guy in charge, and I said, hey, like, what's the deal? And he said, okay, just be ready to be on call, and I'll let you know. And then he basically ended up letting me know. So I went to the base on the 8th, and yeah, it was so like it was a really hard. It's crazy to think about. Like everybody was really disoriented. Nobody really knew what was going on. Everybody kind of just showed up. I remember I went back to Herzliya, and I like packed my bag, and I was like, maximum a week. Like, like it's all good. Like I'm just gonna throw a bunch of stuff in my bag, said goodbye to like who I need to say goodbye to. and I'm there. And then like the next thing I know, like, yeah, a week turns into like 3 weeks, and, it obviously turned into 3 months, but I obviously ended up being able to be home. Um, but yeah, when I think about the beginning days, there was basically a lot of uncertainty. Like we were all just prepping, getting our equipment ready. And then ultimately my unit made a decision to leave the army base, of course, because like we need to be in the field doing stuff. Um, and basically they first said, okay, we're going north. So we drove like 5 hours to the north. And then we slept, in our tents in the north. And then we woke up in the morning, they said, oh, we're actually going to the south. So we packed up all of our stuff, and we have like an ambulance, and then we have like a Hummer, like we have like a couple cars as like a medical team. That's who I do reserve duty with. And then we drove all the way to the south, and we called it the Pita because it's like a big circle where we lived for 3 months. Um, and yeah, so from mid-October until the end of January, I was stationed in the south, like 7 kilometers, 8 kilometers from Gaza. Um, my unit is a special unit, and I'm not, able to say everything that we do, but what I can say we do is we help support people who were inside Gaza from stuff that we do. So we're always in contact with like a certain group of people there. And my job, like me, Davida, as a medic, my job was I was with 100 people, approximately 100 soldiers, all different ages. There was like a big amount of soldiers, combat soldiers who were probably, in their 20s, 30s. And then there was also all of the people who do all the other stuff that supports. It's like so complicated, but the people who are like doing all the more technical stuff. And then there's the medical squad, because wherever there is soldiers, there is a requirement that you have medical staff nearby. So we were with we have always a doctor on hand. We actually had 2 doctors on hand at the beginning, always. And we had like also at the beginning, we had like 4 medics. And basically our purpose was to be there not only to support the 100 soldiers that we were with, in case like whether somebody gets stung by a scorpion, or somebody has the flu, or somebody, God forbid, gets super injured somehow, right? Like we're there for everything, a band-aid to the max. Thank God, we didn't end up, I mean, some people had some crazy just accidents, but there was nothing militarily wise that we had to treat. Um, and yeah, like,
So 3 months you lived in this base, in this.
yeah, 3 months I stayed in a tent. It was the longest camping trip of my life.
I can't even imagine. And then
Yeah.
you release, can you tell us what's like the mood in Eretz Yisrael now? What are people like? What's going on there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't think I could speak for everybody, but I think that there was this big swing of a lot of people getting out of reserve duty after 3 months, 2 months. I was like one of the last of my friends actually who got out. Most of my friends were in for like 2.5 months. And there was this big swing of people getting out. So I feel like I kind of was late on the train of getting out. And I know for me personally, I definitely felt like it was challenging, the transition to leave reserve duty and go back into civilian life, because I guess the weird but special and beautiful thing about Eretz Yisrael is that, it's a really we're resilient people. So in the army, you feel really, I don't know how to describe it, but like I kind of felt like in a bubble, because you don't have your phone, and you almost feel kind of safe. You just kind of have to wake up and like you know what you're to expect every day. Nothing's really changing unless suddenly a rocket falls on you. I mean, life is really boring, quote unquote, and safe actually in a weird way. And then in a civilian life, like people could feel so scared all the time. But on the other hand, a lot of people are like extremely desensitized, because they're like, okay, we're not going to stop our life just because, this terrible thing happened. Like people are still going to school, people are still buying groceries, people are still going to parties, people are still having celebrations. So I remember for me, I was just like, oh my gosh, kind of like, how did everybody move on so quick? That was kind of like how I was feeling. And I remember feeling like that was hard for me to kind of catch up to the same social battery that I felt like my friends who didn't serve at all. Um, were like, yeah, how they were acting. But ultimately, I would say I came to Chicago like a week and a half ago, maybe almost 2 weeks now. And I would say that when I left, I felt like Eretz Israel is in really good spirits, which is amazing. I mean, I can't even believe that I got like quote unquote, back in my routine and desensitized in the way of like, I don't know. I think that we all just understand like there's no option other than to just keep going. Like if we don't keep going, then like, obviously they win. And also just like, I don't know, we're a nation, and we need to just spread love to each other. And the only way, really that we could keep going is just by showing up for each other every day. But I think that it's not the same, it's not the same. There's an underlying energy that's obviously different.
So while you're here now visiting your family, do you feel like you're Chicago, or do you feel like you're visiting Chicago and you're really Israel?
I feel like nothing in Chicago ever changes, which is nice. Like so yeah, I feel like it's definitely home here in some ways. It's kind of like riding a bike when you get in the car, right? And like all the streets are the same. Um, but I can't lie, like as much as I love being with my family, I really miss Israel. Like I just miss it. It's so free. You know, even though I don't like that I don't have like a car in Israel, like it's so cool that you could leave your house and kind of like walk everywhere and everything's so beautiful, the weather and I don't know, really like young energy that's alive. At the end of the day, like it's so cool to trust everybody on the street, if you know what I mean. Like here, obviously you could trust like, the people and Jewish people, but that's not everybody. So
Amazing.
yeah,
Well, Davida, we want to first of all thank you for your service to our people, to
of
protecting our
course.
land. Hashem should continue to protect all of the soldiers, and we continue to daven for, the true victory, the release of all the hostages, and the healing of all the
Mhm.
wounded, and the comfort of all the mourners. If somebody wants to just very briefly unmute and ask a question, otherwise we're going to let Davida enjoy her evening. Nira.
תודה רבה. You packed for 1 week. You left. You stayed there for 3 months. How did you manage?
Yeah. So we got to go home after for a few weeks and we had like tons of donations coming in at the beginning. So, and also at the end of the day, you're wearing a uniform, right? So like as like all you need is your undergarments and there's tons of donations and like, there are tons of shampoo. I think I saw every single Israeli product ever made in history, every snack, every shampoo, everything. So yeah, good question
Like
though.
Yisrael. Who was there like the Jewish people?
Yeah.
Davida, during those 3 months that you were in reserve and you were in the South, what were the conditions like? Did you have showers or like, are you only eating army rations or are you eating like,
Mhm.
or delivering pizza? What was like, could you describe like a regular day or regular week?
Yeah.
What were the conditions like?
So it definitely changed from like month one to month three or month two even. But at the beginning, I mean, there were no showers until the end. We would drive to a kibbutz or an army base nearby. That wasn't so far. We had a bunch of Hummers, right? Tons of army vehicles. So we would take like a 10-minute, 15-minute drive. You'd leave for an hour, make sure somebody's like on call while you and another person leave and you can go shower, check your phone. And then food wise, at the beginning, it was definitely like, yeah, more of like like a lot of donations coming in. And so you're eating kind of like a lot of, I don't know, wherever this food came from, but there's a lot of food. And then of course you always have like the army, it's called a manakim. It's like, yeah, the army box that you could imagine that has like tuna, corn, chickpeas, chalva, and like you could just get creative. And then tons of like Israelis are just, I don't know if you guys know this, but like they are always coming prepared. After people touched home, they are coming back with like boxes of snacks and food. But at the beginning, it was definitely very like unhealthy. And then by month two, they kind of were like, okay, we're gonna be here for a while. Who knows? So they actually established like a really amazing outdoor kitchen for us. Like we built crazy big tents and then we had like literal tables. We got electricity, we got electricity running, so we had like little cooler boxes, and they always brought, we always had cheese, like cottage cheese, bread, vegetables, toaster oven. So we're not a lot of meat, but definitely like tons of fruits and veggies and your basics. So that was really good. By like month 2 and 3 was awesome actually.
Beautiful.
Can you talk about Noe? What did he do?
My brother served, yeah, I mean he served, I don't know so much about what he did. He's a combat soldier and he was in the Nachal brigade and he was in like the Lebanon border. So
Mother
pretty
of
much
punching. He sits at a desk all day and types.
yeah. Yeah, I think he was like really much, protecting the northern border with his team, fighting Hezbollah, always making sure that there was no, invasions of the border and all of that stuff. But you'll have to have him on to ask him
Okay.
some questions.
It's a deal.
He'll be home.
Okay, when he's home, we're
Yeah.
definitely gonna have him on. That's a deal.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, we're gonna let Davida go. We want to thank you again for your service. Hashem should continue to protect you and of course all of our soldiers, protecting our people and our land. And you should bring us the ultimate protection with the coming of Mashiach, and we'll all go to Eretz Yisrael, and it'll be truly Am Yisrael Chai. So thank you. You're an
Of
inspiration.
course.
We saw
Thank you guys
growing
for your
up here.
brachot.
Remember when you were
Amen.
little, and now
Yeah.
we're so proud. to
Sleeping
see
on the
you.
couch.
There you go, right. Sleeping on the
Yeah.
couch, coming for the sneaker. We remember those great days. We're very, very
Yeah.
proud of what you and your brothers are doing. God bless you, keep you safe, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
everyone,
Epstein.
for taking the